Hi, welcome to SHOWstudio. We're here today to discuss J.W. Anderson at Pity, and let's just dive right in with the introduction, starting with you, Mimma.
Hi, I'm Mimma Viglezio, and I'm a creative consultant.
I'm Jenna Rossi-Camus, I'm a fashion curator.
I'm Amnah, and I'm the editor-in-chief and co-founder of a magazine called Cause and Effect.
I'm Hettie Judah, and I'm an art critic.
And I'm Mactaggart, and I'm very excited to announce that I've just been appointed as Theresa May's stylist.
She needs it. Yeah.
She does, yeah. All I can say is there's going to be a lot of Anthony Price. Okay, so J.W. Anderson, the kind of topic that we wanted to discuss today was the designer as curator, off the back of the exhibition that J.W. has done at the Hepworth in Wakefield. But going straight to the collection, this is perhaps his least artistic, if I'm being kind, perhaps his laziest, if I'm being cruel. I want to jump in just straight away to the collection. We've seen it was last night. What was everyone's reaction to this kind of rebrand, perhaps, or new direction for JW?
I've not seen it, so...
You haven't seen it. Who's seen it, then?
Yeah, I know.
I thought it was his most commercial, definitely, and if I may say so, probably a lot more masculine or masculine-driven from his previous collections. That's the kind of take I got, but it definitely is a different direction. It's more menswear than kind of challenging or pushing the boundaries of menswear. Just kind of a typical menswear. That's how I saw it. So not my favorite, but I think very commercial, probably sell really well.
I loved it. And I know that's quite expected. I think he's very clever. I think he's done what he needed to do to become who he is. Mm-hmm. And now he's saying, fine, I need to sell some clothes. Yeah. And so he's doing a collection that I think reminds me of him. So it's not that different. Mm-hmm. It's probably more style than design, if that makes any sense. And I thought it was great. It was a bit normal, but why not? I mean, why does commercial have to be so bad? I mean, these people need to eat and pay bills and pay fabrics and survive.
I'd like to pull you up on this.
Maybe the white t-shirt with Bermudas he could have avoided.
I'd like to pull you up on this idea of it being commercial, because to me, just because something is casual doesn't mean it's going to sell. And I think that this, to me, is a very unattractive collection. And
that's subjective, though.
I
mean,
I suppose
is
so.
Respectful, but
yeah,
that's subjective.
yeah. But I don't think, I have a feeling this is a kind of quite patronizing collection to a kind of everyday consumer. I really don't think anyone wants to wear kind of a YSL heart print rehashed on a...
It was more Prada to me than what I said.
That's more Prada to you?
Yeah, I saw some Prada in it. But I think people will want to wear this because there are so many people that want to belong to the J.W. Anderson tribe, but they couldn't wear a skirt.
Or they wouldn't know how to wear a skirt.
Or they were
how
not
to
brave
put it
enough.
together. Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
I'm sure that little blue jumper with the anchor in the shape of his logo is going to be a bestseller. But
He's sold a lot of those before, hasn't he?
I think here it's more about commercial or fashion. I think we need to do a whole panel about this. I think where fashion is going.
Well, of course.
Fashion needs to be worn, to be relevant and to resonate on people. And so you can do things that are pushing it forwards, and then once you establish yourself, I think he's a genius. You establish yourself and then you put out a white t-shirt and laugh all the way to the bank.
Yeah.
I just guess I don't see it as particularly commercial. I don't think that people really would want to wear... I don't think young people who are buying clothes or interested in buying JW want to wear these top man looking clothes.
God, no.
But I don't think it would be the original JW, customer. I think that this is bringing on a new type of customer for J.W. Anderson. I mean, the collaboration with Converse I think that's going to do incredibly well. And, so I feel like he's bringing in a whole different audience. I don't know if he's isolating his original J.W. Anderson fans, but, I definitely think that...
I don't think he is. I agree with you. I mean, he said, I don't know if you read his interview behind the scenes of this show, he said, and that's where I think he's very, very clever, he said, I need J.W. Anderson to be universal. I love doing fashion, but then I want my name to be known, and hence Uniqlo and hence Converse. So it could be an excuse, but I think he's communication genius. I'm a communicator. I think, I don't know if he does it himself or he has some amazing advisor. I was reading this, and every quote of him, I thought he's really, really smart.
But I mean, does this not then come to the point that I guess is the theme of this panel is how much is he actually now involved in creating the clothes? I mean, he seems to have his finger in so many pies. And in that interview, that I think was at the Business of Fashion one with Osman.
I read it this morning, yeah.
I think he was really talking about even wanting to kind of hand the brand over to other people to be able to kind of do the day-to-day side of it. I think...
In the future, he said.
Yeah, in the future. But I mean, when I look at the number of things he's involved in, I wonder how he has time to even design. I mean, he's... every interview seems to be talking about his love for collecting ceramics or for flower arranging or working in his garden or, there's some new passion that seems to come through. And you think, well, how does this guy actually manage to hold down 2 day jobs, doing Loewe and doing this? So, maybe he is taking a kind of back seat and becoming, as you say, a communicator. He's very good at creating this aura around the brand, or around the brands.
He reminds me of Karl Lagerfeld in a way, not stylistically, but in the way completely not.
In that he would love to be
everything and maybe, but design. I mean, Karl says he actually draws and designs, but, and he's still up there at 120 years old, you know what I mean? So, I don't know.
But he has also always had this thing about accessibility as well. So right when he did that Topshop collection, which was really quite a long time ago now, he was really insistent on the fact that there were kind of little £1.75 key rings that people could buy. And this idea of there being an entry-level product has always been there as part of his ethos. So I guess this is kind of, particularly the collaboration with Converse and stuff, the idea that you build up desire, you're constantly working on the next generation of
and
consumers.
And he continues to do that, even with Loewe, and I know Loewe is a higher price point, but he does all those badges and key rings, and, those are, again, accessible. They're not, he takes that and puts it in Loewe as well. And I think it's, you mentioned Loewe, and I think there's something about him being able to really express himself in Loewe in a way that he no longer can, yes. Or maybe this is, what I think, that he no longer can with J.W. Anderson. So why not turn it into what we're seeing now and continue to have kind of freedom of expression at Loewe, which he obviously does.
I think in this discussion about accessibility, we're missing the idea of desirability. And I think that no matter if you sell a keyring for £1.75, it's whether people want that keyring or not. And when I look at this collection, I see a lot of things which I don't think consumers are desperate to buy. I don't think that they're looking to buy these sandals. I think the Converse shoes, for example, we brought up the Converse shoes.
But flip-flops are problematic anyway, so, that's a whole other...
But if you look at Converse, I think of the classic Margiela Converse collaboration, and that was something that so many people were clamoring to buy. It's still something that is incredibly sought after. If you pull up an image of the JW Converse collaboration, I think they just look cheap and undesirable. I'm not seeing the kind of desirability about a collection like this. I'm not seeing people kind of clamoring to want to buy these clothes.
But the way that young people buy clothes nowadays isn't necessarily even to do with the individual pieces, it's to do with the whole aura that's created around a brand. When the J.W. Anderson Converse collaboration was announced, my 16-year-old came into the room, knocked on the door and went, J.W. Anderson Converse collaboration. You know, it's two names, it's two sets of auras, they're coming together.
Exactly.
It's not that, you know, people know the names and they know the whole identity of the brand and they get this feeling of it. And that's what feeds into the desirability, I think, more than the individual pieces.
That makes it desirable, no matter what it looks like.
I think that's quite a cynical way to look at consumers, honestly.
It's the reality, Phil. I mean, you're a purist. You're a. I'm saying
yeah.
it. This is the reality, and when you put J.W. Anderson and Converse, which, by the way, it's a very good idea, especially for Converse, after
who aren't
losing it
doing
to
very
Stan
well,
Smith.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They lost it completely to Adidas for a while, but I mean, that's going to be huge success. I have no doubt. And I don't even care what they will look like. I know, I mean, I do care, but I mean, I know they will be successful because it's the two universes together.
Well, he's described, I also want to bring up, he's described this collection on BOF as, well, he says, the collection for me feels more like an intimate portrayal of myself. It's how I see myself in the summer or how I want to be in the summer. It's a character that is a fantasy of myself and a self-portrait of what I'm into and what I wear. And I can certainly see a lot of his own personal style in this because he's always dressed in a quite, you know, blue jeans and New Balances.
But then he also said that he based it on tourists that he would see around Florence.
Which was a little bit weird. That was weird.
Exactly. So that there's that, you know, what does that really mean? I mean, I think those two statements contradict the other.
But I mean, there's also, you know, there's definite bad taste coming into here, which is what he's also quite good at doing and what's always what pushes things forward. So all of these, you know, I mean, logo T-shirts are just like the acme of naffness. And so to put a big logo tourist T-shirt out there, you know, I mean, okay, it's been done, you know, also those kind of stiff knee-length denim shorts and this kind of thing. You know, looking at awkward-looking tourists, particularly if you're somewhere like Florence where you have these beautifully dressed Italians walking around, and then you suddenly hit like a British wedding party, and it's like, oh my God, where did all this nylon floral come from? You know, it really stands in very stark contrast. So I guess he's, you know.
Well, where's the Americana coming from as well? All those kind of Coca-Cola inspired like calligraphy on all the trousers and all the T-shirts. Did you notice that in this collection?
But that's all, I mean, obviously he had his own collaboration with Coca-Cola that was quite successful. I can't remember quite when that was. I feel like this reinterpreting, you know, it reminds me of Balenciaga doing the Bernie Sanders logo and of, you know, all these designers seem to think that it's, again, I think it's something that works on Tumblr and Instagram very well, is because suddenly you see J.W. Anderson written in the Coca-Cola logo font, and that's something that's viral and shared. But I feel like consumers are getting fed up of seeing this stuff rehashed and rehashed. I remember Martine Rose in 2013 also did her name in a much more clever way, actually, in a much more desirable way, I thought. Did Martine Rose in the Coca-Cola logo, she did her name in the Carlsberg logo as well, and she did a whole collection around kind of beer mats and things like that, which to me, I don't know, seemed to resonate more with something new, something desirable. And then you have JW sticks his face on a T-shirt that says militant men wear J.W. Anderson. I just think it's embarrassing. Is it not?
But that's what I thought, that's kind of what I meant about really bad taste. And
Yeah.
It's really vulgar.
Yeah.
Especially where we are politically as well. I don't know, militant men wearing, it's a little uncomfortable, I thought, you know. I didn't think there were certain pieces in there that I thought were lovely, especially the first three that came down. I felt, you know, there was that, I believe it was a gray coat that came down that felt very J.W. Anderson. That one, that very
Oh
first
God,
one.
sorry, but that is hideous. Nobody wants to wear a trench coat that's longer than your shorts.
Why not?
Trench coat is that.
Burberry, I guarantee you, Burberry are selling that on their web store right now. Heart printed Burberry scarves.
Are they?
With, yeah, absolutely. I think I've even got an image of that. It's on their web store right now.
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So, I mean, I don't know why That's on Burberry's web store right now. That to me is just, I don't know, it looks
On that
cheap.
one, I agree.
But I don't see
agree
the
on that
same. I don't see this. I don't see this the same as that first look at all. I mean, I understand the comparison, but I just don't think they're the same at all.
Well, let's go on to Jonathan as curator, which is what we're supposed to be here to discuss. He's kind of stuck his face on this T-shirt. I think if we can find that, the militant men wear J.W. Anderson, which to me says that he kind of sees himself as this kind of Coons type character. That's the one there, number 19. So I can see him wanting to position himself very much as this kind of celebrity fashion designer who's interested in art and curation. I mean, you are, I think, the only one who's been to the actual exhibition.
You've been to the exhibition
Oh, you've been
as
as well. Okay, so
well, it's an interesting thing, and I think I agree with Jonathan being clever about many things, and I think his approach to curating is clever, but it's also clever because it's so simple. And there's a tradition of designers and artists curating shows, intervening in collections. It's happened a lot in fashion. In 1971, Cecil Beaton curated an exhibition at the V&A. So this idea of the outsider who's somehow given a little bit of license to reframe a collection, and uniquely in this exhibition, the way that he put his own work in is actually not putting his face on a T-shirt. and interestingly, you can buy one or two things from JW's collections in the very small gift shop, but this is very pared back, and it really looks like somebody playing. And obviously in his own collections, he's playing, and he's playing with personal associations, good taste, bad taste, high, low, mixing things up, things from the past, but also with a confidence about things going together because they look good together. And I think it's something that actually in the collections we see purposely putting things together that don't look good together. But that's a great example there. So if you look at the installation views of the show, there's a curatorial hand that's quite fearless. And obviously he did this in collaboration with the museum's directors, lots of assistants who unfortunately are not named. But I'm sure that there's a lot of people who worked very hard to collate this. And
why are they not named?
They are named, actually. It's Stephanie McDonald, the 6A architect, did the whole design, and Andrew Bonaccini was
the high end.
director,
I'm thinking of all the
Yeah.
assistant curators, all the people who were sorting out all those loans, all the logistics about what could go with what. But I think the benefit of that is that what we see is a really seamless. We can believe this is J.W. Anderson curating the Hepworth. That's the title of the exhibition, and it seems his voice is there as well as a curatorial voice, but the personal associations can really run free. And he's not telling you too much. He's not telling you that fashion is art, that he's an artist, or to buy anything. And I think it's really what makes it sing. So, yeah.
And yourself, Hettie?
I mean, I thought it was a really lovely show, actually. But it's very much kind of four people's visions. So it's him working with Andrew very closely, and Andrew obviously knows the collection in depth. I think 6A Architects' design was incredibly important for it. It was a really, really, really good and interesting exhibition design. And they took this great big David Chipperfield space, and they used bolts of textiles from his archive, including this kind of like rabbit print corduroy, and some really quite kitsch textiles, and created these kind of pods, really interesting. You can see really nice sight lines there. And then also his work with Jamie Hawksworth was really, really central to the whole exhibition. So it started off with this room of a series they called the Thinleys, which are, bit kind of cloth kind of pulled over bodies, making strange poddy shapes. And then there was this really sweet series of photographs. I think there's some of the kids wearing exhibits. And I think as a fashion exhibition, what was interesting was that it was quite irreverent about the way it treated the fashion. So it had the kids wearing the clothes. It had like Madame Grey dresses like chucked over a chair, training on the floor.
Stretched out Gaultier dress.
So they weren't actually perfected at all. They were being kind of treated quite badly and worn. And it felt very accessible. It felt like quite demystifying. So it was actually, I thought it was a really terrific exhibition. And when you go and see these great big kind of over the top Alexander McQueen, Savage Beatings, which is so theatrical and distancing, and you feel like you're being pushed through a sausage factory and to get quickly from one end to the other so they can get the next set of highly paying ticket holders in. You know, this was a really different atmosphere. And he genuinely, uncynically seemed very passionate about it. You know, I interviewed him, I interviewed the designer, Andrew, and, you know, he was talking about how, you know, art's what he does when he's not designing, and how he became passionate about ceramics from his grandfather, who was a collector. So it definitely does seem to come from the heart. And I thought it was actually a lovely show. So, yeah, whatever you may think about him.
Having not seen the show, I thought his choice of designers were really interesting, because Jonathan Anderson, or J.W. Anderson, came on to the scene by introducing this kind of gender-neutral aesthetic. And, you know, having Izzy Miyake in there, who else is in there?
A lot of Com, a lot of Yoji.
You know, exactly, who all kind of came out in the 80s, you know, not particularly saying that they were gender neutral. I believe Yoji did talk about gender, but nonetheless, clothes that were also gender neutral. So I think his choice of the designers that he's used in this exhibition was very interesting.
I think, to me, when I think of Com and Gautier and Yoji and Izzy, who are represented in there, that doesn't sit with JW's world at all. With JW, I think of Ungaro, I think of Claude Montana, I think of those kind of 80s designers, which are much less. I don't see him relating to Helmut Lang.
It's not necessarily a lineage to his work. So that's the thing that's interesting about this. So if an outside curator came and said, I'm going to make parallels between JW's work and his, you know, his ancestors, so to speak, that's quite different than in this. He was talking about the relationship between the Hepworth collection of 20th century British sculpture, which has previously been an influence to him. So that's why he was invited. But what's the sort of filling in the dots? So among that, other fashion designers were cited not because they go from that designer to Jonathan, but from sculpture to fashion design. So there's there's this through line that is not necessarily about, hey, this was stuck on my mood board and here it is, which there are exhibitions like that. They can be well done, but this was something rather more about opening up a conversation, saying, this, I associate these things personally. Why do you think they're in a room together?
And also very much about the human body. And I think what was interesting was when they announced the exhibition a couple of years ago, and all we had was the title, Disobedient Bodies, and this Jamie Hawksworth image. I think there was an assumption that it was the Hepworth looking at androgyny and gender neutrality. And I think this maybe this has become an issue for him, that he became so associated with this thing of gender neutral clothing. And he was very much ahead of the conversation, and that conversation has moved so mainstream.
No, sorry, I have to challenge you on that, because I never bought J.W. Anderson as anyone who's really challenging gender. To me, dressing men in an effeminate way is to do with his own fantasies about young men, and I don't think that's a particularly progressive gender vision that he brought to the table. I don't think he's particularly interested in challenging convention. I think he's just attracted to feminine boys, and that's why he put them down the runways.
What's different about, I think, you obviously dislike, not dislike him or his fashion, but dislike everything around him. I think that, again, that's subjective, because he was, probably Hettie was before him, long before him, but he was one of the first that re-brought it out, and so maybe it's his vision about where the world is going. And listening to you two about a show that I haven't seen, so I can obviously not discuss it, for me, it links all the dots of what we said about his collection. It's like almost taking a distance to whatever he's been standing for. It's like, okay, now everybody else has done it, let's move on. And what do I want to discuss about?
And not every collection had men in dresses or men dressed in effeminate ways. I think he took menswear and he just kind of pushed the boundaries of it a little bit. It's not, he's had very, very different eclectic ways of creating gender neutral items. And one of the ways in which he does it is that a kind of repeat from the menswear to the women's wear. So you'll have identical clothing that will go on the menswear catwalk and be, in the women's wear in the following season. So he's played with gender in that way. And when I meant about, I don't think aesthetically he is like Izzy Miyake or Yoji Yamamoto, but he is definitely, they're all kind of in the same boat of, discussing or, dissecting gender neutrality. They were pioneering, of course, but I just thought, I think that that's definitely an inspiration to him. It must have been, using that exhibition as well. I just, maybe because I haven't seen it, maybe that's how I'm connecting the dots, but.
I mean, it's interesting, the progression. One of my favorite, I do have a favorite JW collection, and it's the one that he did for Versus, if we're able to look at that. It's interesting to compare that boy to the one that we're looking at today, and even from last season. So in the Versus collection, which I think is just fantastic, it's so gay, it's so sexy. I just think it's fantastic.
I think it's also very J.W. Anderson as well.
But what we're seeing now is it's kind of totally lost the silhouette. The men on these catwalks have absolutely no silhouette to talk about, really. And it's a very different person from the boy who's in the Versus collection. I'm quite interested in how he's traveled from there.
Because I think he's more an interpreter of society than a fashion designer. I think he uses fashion and I don't know how to say that and not sound banal or trite, but I mean, I think he's a visionary in his own way, and he's interpreting what's going on and make either fun of it or serious of it. And if you look at what he did for Versus or his first collection, yeah, there is a big evolution, but the world has completely transformed in the meantime. And again, I think he's clever. He's following, or he's setting basis. I don't know. Do I like it aesthetically? No, but I understand that that's more interesting, probably fashion-wise. Today, he's less interested in that discourse than maybe the art, or maybe the art direction, or maybe the curating.
I mean, maybe at the moment he just felt that he needed to do a really banal collection, because maybe fashion needs to be banal right now with the world just
That
going
seems like a very kind
completely
of
tits up.
Vetements kind of
And
style
Vetements
to
have
do.
that. They've occupied that territory. They've got Jeremy Corbyn as their, pin-up boy. So.
Yeah, it's just, it feels like nobody cares about fashion anymore.
So maybe he's doing maybe he's doing the collection for that moment, because it's to be doing the show the day a tower block in London sets on fire and all these people are dying. I mean, who gives a crap? So.
I know, but that I didn't know before. So, but I
know. I mean, we're just
yesterday
we're constantly surrounded by, there's been such high loss of life in the last couple of months, and there've been all these horrible political eruptions. So, it's not maybe the time for doing completely crazy, flamboyant things, theatrics.
That's where society is today. What matters.
I think
But
society.
people still need escapism.
They need to put some clothes on their back as well. So.
Yeah.
But I think society is in a place where it's lost, it needs a new ideology, and I feel like we are in a kind of holding area where we're looking at boring collections like this, we're looking at Vetements doing their stereotypes collection, and we're in this holding pattern of, I don't know what to design, nobody knows what to design, there's no new ideology, there's no new movements, there's no new politics. So I see this very much in a kind of safe space of not wanting to agitate, not looking for new ideas, kind of turning inwards and saying the only thing left is commercialism, and it's not inspiring. I think what we need in this moment is something a lot more challenging than this.
Do you not think that there's also in this nostalgia looking back? So obviously, yes, we need something better and new, and it's not the first time that we've been able to say this about Anderson in the tactileness, in recycling, that there's ideas in here about a better world, maybe one that was behind us. And I think looking at this collection as well, I don't know if it's specifically a reference, his looking at tourists, his thinking of himself in the summer, probably thinking of himself in the summer in the late 90s, so which maybe is a time of political innocence compared to right now. So what's in here, in the bad taste, in the question, which he's asking as well, do people want to wear these clothes? And will people wear this because it's default, because we are not that concerned and we can put things together in a different way? So I think, the inward looking is a type of reflection, and I see that in the exhibition as well as the collections. So I think it's a relevant question, again, whether you like how it looks or not, or you think that, the men that you know would buy it.
Yeah, I want to probe that. How you're talking about that inward-looking feeling in the exhibition as well.
Yeah, I think in his interview that's published in the catalogue, which also is excellent, so it's another way of looking at the things that have been completely rearranged in the catalogue. They're laid out with a different design eye, collaborative design eye. But I think the personal, well, it's when a curator picks things out, it's personal, and I think we like to think that curators are objective, that they research a topic. If we're making an exhibition about Alexander McQueen or Balenciaga, we have facts, we go to them, and we have to give a story. But the beauty of these kind of collaborations is that they're free to be personal, and to say, well, yes, I'm the person who thought about how would a Gautier dress look on a Henry Moore sculpture, so I'm putting that in there personally. As a curator, that's a big luxury. That is something that would make a curator consider framing themselves as an artist, so that they could have those personal fascinations, and they're made apparent visually. Here's a really, really great example up on the screen. So it's his conversation with the Hepworth, with Henry Moore, and with being a cultural magpie, and he really makes that connection between how he devises a collection and how you take lots of ideas and you have to distill them, and I think it's his personal practice that comes through.
How do we feel as well in the context of the kind of COM exhibition about seeing fashion in museums, in galleries? I mean, I kind of want to probe that idea, that kind of basic idea a bit more. Because also, so you have COM, which has this huge exhibition, but also not too long ago, Westwood Sun burned the entire archive as a kind of rebellion against this I guess, museumifying of something. How does the context of a very radical garment change when it's in a museum or in an art context? I'd like to ask you, Hettie.
Oh, that's quite a complicated one. I mean, it's really interesting with the Balenciaga show currently at the V&A is that they've really changed the way they're displaying it, and it's very much more about the craft and the architecture of each object. And they've really looked a lot at the way that at Balenciaga's technique and the pattern making, and so it's become much more of a craft exhibition than an art exhibition. So they're not being shown as if they're art objects, they're really being shown as if they're part of the V&A's design holding, I guess. It's tough. I mean, actually, Jonathan did say that he very much felt that fashion was part of art when he was working on this, and that it was there with an equal status. It's a really tough one.
I mean, because we often talk about fashion as wearable art. And to me, I find the most radical part of fashion is that it's something that you put on your body. And I get quite, I don't know, that context changes a lot when it becomes an object in a museum.
Absolutely.
I think it's very interesting what you just said about the Balenciaga show, because that's why I liked it so much, because it's about craft, and I think fashion is not art, it's craft, which is art in a certain way, but I haven't been to the COM yet. I'm going next month, so I can't really say what I think, but I'm usually quite disturbed by fashion in museums when it's just there as fashion, and I usually don't go, because I don't understand. But then what Jonathan did, and again, I haven't seen it, but I read about it and listened to you, it's more interesting to me because it connects the two in a different way. It's not about showing a designer. Well, I remember long time ago, Armani, but we're talking probably 15 years ago, even more, an Armani show was one of the first at the Guggenheim, and I was there looking like literally mannequins in a shop window and saying,
Is it just mannequins?
what the heck?
Yeah.
I mean, why am I even here? I didn't go on purpose, but I mean, so I'm
It was,
glad you
I
said.
mean, it ruffled a lot of feathers. I mean, just down the road, fashion had been at the Met
It was
for
one of the first.
decades, but yeah.
But it was this big thing happening, and then you will go in there and you were in a store practically, you know? And so it's like, however, if it's done the way Jonathan did, or if it's done the way the V&A did it for Balenciaga, which my least favorite part was the references with the new designers. It's
That's
like,
what I was going to bring up.
That's an example.
Why is
yeah.
Molly Goddard in the Balenciaga exhibition?
yeah, I mean, nothing against
Molly
but
Goddard.
I mean, no, I mean, and I even love Molly a lot, but I mean, it was just useless. It was just, but that's what people understand better. That's where people were spending more time. I don't know if you noticed. That's where people were like, oh, now I get it, you know, and because you also need to sell tickets again, you know.
I mean, I think you're right. I think putting fashion in a museum points up a lot of the issues of fashion that, you know, are you looking at it as something that's beautifully made? Are you looking at it as something that's provoking desire? Are you looking at it as a kind of visual language? And if you're looking at it as visual language, does it then make sense to remove that visual language from the context of the body and the surrounding culture? And if it doesn't make sense to remove it from the body and the surrounding culture, then what you're talking about isn't really fashion, it's more styling. And then how do you separate something like styling from an act of curating? Which brings us back around very neatly.
No, but it's very interesting what you're saying. It's very true.
Because JW's often been, I think it's very much about styling. I think a lot of people credit Benjamin Bruno to be a huge part of what JW does. Again, that question of styling, I think it's very relevant to JW. Oh yeah, I've got some pictures of Benjamin Bruno's latest styling adventure. I mean, this is just dreadful. I just wanted to bring this up because it's just bad styling. Sorry, that's all I've got to say about it. This is a Benjamin Bruno story for Arena On that was recently done. And this, to me, speaks volumes about what they're about as a brand. I just think that it's tacky,
I feel like, though, we're always expecting spectacular things from artists, from stylists, from designers, season after season. And sometimes, you know, and especially in the case of J.W. Anderson and the amount that he does, you know, we dissect every show and we go, oh, it wasn't like the last one, or it wasn't like, you know, and there's just too much pressure to, you know, constantly give us quality stuff. I'm not saying that's an excuse, but, you know, they're all human, and
I don't think there's nearly enough pressure. I think the fashion press are incredibly eager to just eat things up without really much criticism, honestly.
That's completely true.
I don't think there's nearly enough pressure on designers. I don't think this will get much criticism. I think that most people will say will agree with you, Mimma, that it's a genius move. And I don't think we'll see a balanced discussion about it. I come from the kind of Cathy Horan school of journalism on that.
But I agree with you, and Cathy is one of my favorite writer and critics, but I'm trying to be realistic about today. I mean, there's so much stuff. It's almost disgusting.
Yeah.
There's so much useless.
Yeah.
Ugly is subjective. I mean, and when you go and talk to young student or to future fashion designer, you tell them, just don't give me more stuff. Just don't even try. Yeah. You know, and of course, when you work in an archive with the top of the top from the past, and there were like five. There were like 5 musicians and they were dominating. Now there's like 5 million. And 4.5 million of which are totally useless. So I think when someone stands out, somehow, somewhere, well, maybe they did something right, or they did something that is relevant to today. And I believe that that matters because it's commerce as well at the end of the day.
I mean, I think also, you know, you say that he's not going to receive criticism for this. At the end of the day with fashion, it's actually not the opinion of the critics that matters, it's the buyers. And so if this doesn't get picked up, then that's really going to be a slap on the wrist, and that will affect him.
Exactly.
I mean, I think when you talk about whether there's a difference between fashion and art as well, that's the big difference, that fashion operates at a completely different timeline. You know, fashion's incredibly accelerated. It's become incredibly accelerated within the last 10, 15 years. And as an artist, there's no way you're expected to produce new ideas and new
Season after
things at anything like this pace. And it's also not meant to be, you know, disposable in the same way at all either.
I mean, it's interesting when fashion designers end up turning to art, perhaps as a kind of antidote to that fast
Your friend
pace.
Margiela, obviously.
Yes, or Helmut Lang, for example. Yeah, as a kind of antidote to that fast pace in order to find a bit more of a meditative, creative space, perhaps. I mean, is fashion moving too fast? I mean, I think this is a collection that says fashion is moving too fast. It's like it looks like a very high street collection to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you, actually. Having now seen the collection, it does feel like quite a placeholder collection, and I think it could be shoved straight into Topshop, and it wouldn't look... I mean, on the other hand, we can't... You know, it's always the thing, we can't see the finish on it, we can't see the way... Maybe it's all hand-embroidered.
I draw a comparison here that has nothing to do, so sorry, J.W. Anderson, but I was thinking about what Alexa Chung did, okay? For me, that's like, why would someone buy a dungaree for £450, which is a hell of a lot of money for a dungaree that will be copied identical, okay? Due all respect, whatever I wish her well, she did many incredible things, but that could be in trouble because it's too close to what the high street can do for much cheaper. I don't see it here. I mean, I haven't seen the details, I haven't touched the collection.
There's still some technique.
But there's still some ideas, there's some techniques that I totally disagree. This doesn't look like high street. I don't, and I hear what you say, but I don't think this will have the same problem.
But I mean, speaking of Alexa Chung, or I think indeed of Victoria Beckham, which is kind of knockoff Celine brand, you think of all these quite celebrity designers, and I really see in J.W. Anderson somebody who's so hungry for his celebrity.
I don't see that at all.
I'm not sure he's hungry for his celebrity, he's hungry for his success, which why not?
Yeah.
It's different. He's not hungry, because all those stars that do fashion and they have no idea about how to even spell fashion, he's not that. He studied fashion. I mean, he did something. I don't think he's hungry for celebrity.
And he works incredibly hard.
He works hard, and what he did with Loewe, it's proof of that, because you can like it or not, he did an amazing job by himself, I mean, with his collaborator in such short time. And how many people tried to revive Loewe for how many years? I mean, I was there. You're too young, but trying, and then he comes along, hit the whatever running. I don't even know the expression.
The ground running.
The ground running. Thank you. And succeeds. So
Yeah, and it had a lot of him in it. It had a lot of him in it, and it was still wearable.
It's very clever. And I love his taste, but that's subjective. You know, you can like it or not. But I think he's not hungry for celebrity. He's hungry for success.
I think what I meant for saying I thought it could be dropped straight into Top Man is not that I thought it looked like it was...
But he did.
I don't think Top Man would go this low, quite honestly. I think Top Man has better styling than this.
That's very conservative. Do you ever go in there?
It is very conservative, but I think there
really
is...
conservative.
Yeah, but I think there is at least an attention to how a modern man wants to dress, and I don't see that in this collection at all. I don't think any modern man wants to wear a knockoff YSL heart print with nautical stripes and chinos. I just don't see it. I've never met that.
You were
I've
calling
never
me
met
without
that boy.
images and saying that, I'm like, oh, I agree.
Well-
And I see the whole of it and I disagree. But the way you say it, it's very convincing, yeah.
And also he's got Loewe to experiment freely. I mean, why not go in this direction when he can still apply his vision elsewhere and beautifully in Loewe? Perfectly, as far as but I'm biased.
agree.
I mean, I
agree.
think Loewe is perfection.
I agree.
There's nothing about it that I don't like. Talk about curation. I mean, the store in itself. Have you been to the store in Madrid?
He's got a flower shop there now,
Oh,
hasn't
yes.
he? Yeah.
Yeah.
Gorgeous, gorgeous. And the original or the flagship store in Madrid, they held the exhibition downstairs when they did the imagery from, oh God, the name of the photographer escapes me, but she was...
Was she, you said, or he?
She, when with all the octopuses and different...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they had an exhibition of hers downstairs, which was absolutely beautiful. And I just think he has Loewe to do all of this, so why not go in this direction?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's
No,
how I feel.
actually, interestingly, I work with a magazine called The Plant sometimes, which is about plants, and he was talking about Constance Spry in that, and he was also talking about his vision for the Loewe stores and saying that he wants Loewe to be part of a wider cultural vision. So there's always going to be this idea that you bring in the flower shop, you bring in the art exhibitions, you bring in the books. And I know he's not the
Furniture
first.
now
Yeah,
as well.
I know he's not the first person to do that, but I think it keeps coming back to this idea that I think, as Mimma says, he's a great communicator. It's not just about designing the clothes, it's about creating this universe, this tangibility that people can buy into, whether it's buying a bouquet or it's buying a pair of nasty flip-flops or it's buying an overpriced white T-shirt.
Yeah.
I'd like to make the point about Loewe, though, that it feels very much like a J.W. Anderson greatest hits kind of collection.
How so? Elaborate.
It just looks kind of rehashed. It's just kind of gone back into what he's already done and kind of rehashed for a new customer that already exists at Loewe.
But a human being has a style and a signature,
Yeah,
so I mean,
yeah.
there will always,
Same
there
design,
will
the
always
same
be a little
eye.
bit of someone in something, okay? I think it's perfect for Loewe because I think he hasn't alienated the people that were attached to the brand, older and Spanish or whatever classic. And he has remodernized it. No, I disagree. But of course there is a little bit of him because he is there.
And let's not forget, it's a leather, it's a leather brand. Exactly. And what he's done with the accessories, the bags, I mean, they're works of art in themselves. So yes, of course you're going to see parts of him in it, but he's still reinterpreted it for the Loewe customer. I feel like the J.W. Anderson customer and the Loewe customer are two different people. Very, very two different
Very
people.
How long do we think he will stay at Loewe?
I hope forever.
Long.
Do you not think he's
It
going
would break my heart. It would break my heart.
Do you not think he would prefer to be somewhere like Louis Vuitton? Don't you think he's angling
maybe
for
they will offer
that kind of thing?
Yeah.
If Nicolas leaves, probably he will be offered Louis Vuitton, but I think they need him there still for a while. The Loewe's never grown in revenues like they are now. It's like you can like or not Alessandro Michele, but good growing like nobody else. Loewe is growing, so there's something working there.
I mean, it's a question of sustaining growth as well, and I would question that about what Gucci is doing right now. I don't think. I mean, we can get onto a whole Gucci conversation, but. Again, I mean, I suppose the link is this kind of like over-styled, lots of references type of thing between JW and Gucci. To me, it's about what kind of growth would last, and I don't really see that in what Michele's doing. But I don't know if we should be discussing Gucci or not.
Yeah, no, I don't think we should, but I can say that history will tell us. I mean, it's very difficult to say also because I believe that the world is changing very fast and people consume in a very different way. And sometimes there are things that work that you're like, why? And then you understand, I don't know. So it's very hard to say. My wish is that there will be fewer and fewer useless things around to confuse us And, you know, because
I'm interested in knowing what these useless things are.
why would I? And also there would be too long of a list.
Well, I think that's quite a good point to end on, perhaps.
Wow.
Thanks very much for tuning in.